Welcome back. There had been rumors that this was coming, and it's come to pass. And I don't know. Jim Montgomery's going to go to some other team and win a Stanley Cup like Bruce Cassidy did, is my guess. Jim Montgomery's an excellent coach, and I know there are Bruins fans that have an issue with him, but I'm going to say straight out, I think Jim Montgomery's doing whatever he could to try to fix this, and I don't know if it's fixable. So Joe Sacco takes over as interim coach. Good luck, Joe Sacco. Seriously, this is not an easy task. Taking over a Boston Bruins team that's been heading in the wrong direction this season, and I don't know if they can be pulled out of this. So I've assembled a bunch of statistics on the board. We're going to talk about Boston a bit here. Now, I've talked about Boston recently, and I've talked about their center depth, but we'll take another look at that. So right now, in goals for per game, they're 31st in the league at 2.4. Not good enough. Goals against per game, 3.45. That is 28th in the National Hockey League. Really not good enough. Their power play is dead last in the NHL at 11.7%. I have a feeling that I can probably explain part of the reason why, or at least some explanation for why. Their penalty kill, also bad. 25th in the league at 75.6%. So you add those special teams number together, you get 87.3. That's not good enough. So adding power play and penalty kill together, you should get 100 and over. And in Boston's case, you don't get 90. In 1-goal games, they're 500. 2-goal games, they're 600. And if it's decided by 3 or more goals, their points percentage drops to 143. Meaning they're getting blown out a heck of a lot more than they are the team that is winning by lopsided scores. If they lead first, they're 4-2-1. If they trail first, they're 4-7-2. The thing that jumps out there, they've only scored first 7 out of the first 20 games this season. They're not starting on time. This is part of the reason why you can make the argument for Jim Montgomery being out. They're not starting on time, and all the line juggling. So Pastrnak leads this team in scoring. 20 games, 8 goals, 9 assists, 17 points. For most players, that would be acceptable, but in Boston's case, they need Pastrnak to be around that 100-point pace because they don't have a lot. Like I was thinking about putting up their wingers on the board to talk about scoring depth, and there's not a lot there. There's not a lot of wingers you look at with Boston that you say, now this guy could score 30 this year if he gets on a bit of a hot streak, and make that argument cogent and make sense. Marchand, 20 games, 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points. Brad Marchand at this point, you look at age, that does start to creep up a bit, and maybe he is going to be a 50 to 60 point player going forward, which again is a problem for the Boston Bruins, who are still run by Don Sweeney. Don Sweeney has fired multiple coaches, and I've never heard anything about Don Sweeney's job being on the line, which is weird because he invested a lot of money in 2 players that have not given them the return that you would want for your investment. Elias Lindholm. I like Lindholm. He had the good run with Vancouver in the playoffs, but during the regular season, he was invisible for long stretches. And this year with Boston, he had a good start, but his numbers, not great. 20 games, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points. Joe Sacco is going to have to get him going. However long this interim coaching job is, he's going to have to get Lindholm going. And Zadorov, 5 assists in 20 games, which is fine. Zadorov's not an offensive defenseman, but he has 46 penalty minutes. He is one of the leading players in the NHL in terms of minor penalties. And unless he's taking somebody with him, he's leaving Boston shorthanded often, and their penalty kill is 25th in the league. So it is hurting them at this point with both Lindholm and Zadorov, because when they brought in Lindholm and they were talking about, their belief in him as, potentially being a top 2 center, I had my doubts. If this argument was being made 5 years ago, I'd say, yep, he's a number 1 center. I don't know if the results would have been better, but his best time in the NHL was playing with playing with Tkachuk as well as Gaudreau. I'm trying to remember if he played with Monahan at some point too. I'm thinking probably not. They're both centers. But yeah, Lindholm, 319 faceoffs. He leads them in faceoffs, 52% on the faceoffs. So at least he's winning faceoffs. Charlie Coyle second in faceoffs, 256, 49.2% in terms of wins. He's played 20 games, 4 goals, 1 assist, 5 points. He's on pace for 20 points. Lindholm's on pace for 36. If you just go to 80, if you go to 82, you can add a point here and there. Zacha, 161 faceoffs for him. He's winning them all right, 52.2%. 20 games played, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. He's been better lately, but he's still on pace for 28 points over 80 games. Kastelik, 122 faceoffs, winning 57.4%. 19 games played, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. Kastelik is just a bottom 6 forward, and a lot of those points would have been scored early in the season when it looked like Boston was going to have the best fourth line in the NHL, which a lot of that talk's dropped off lately. Johnny Beecher's also taken 122 faceoffs, 54.9% in the faceoff circle, 19 games played, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. Beecher's not a big point producer. Zacha, I think, is better suited to a support role than a main event spot. Zacha, he can get you into that 50, 60 point range, sure, but is he a number one center? I would argue no. And this has been my argument with Boston. So while I do see Bruins fans here and there that say, if you're a Bruins fan, you got to believe. You have to believe. As if me believing harder would make these numbers better and make this better. So I've talked about the center spot. We'll talk about the goaltending. Swayman hasn't been good enough. 5-7 and 2, 884 save percentage. And his play is getting worse. I could defend his play a couple weeks ago. Right now I can't. Swayman's play is getting worse, and this might be part of the reason why they made the move behind the bench. The powers that be in Boston seem to still think this is going to be a playoff team. And what's funny is they technically have that X next to their name in a video I did earlier today because they are above the playoff line. But once you get into points percentages, it gets a little bit dodgy. Korpisalo 3-2-1 with a 901 save percentage. Korpisalo's outplayed Swayman. That was not the plan. I don't think if they keep Ullmark, I don't think the story's any better. I don't. I'm sure there are people who would say that, but Ullmark's numbers in Ottawa have not been spectacular. I have no reason to think Ullmark's numbers, if he'd stayed in Boston, would have been spectacular either. I don't think we would have had extra goalie hugs just because those two were still together. I think this is a team that was expected to drop and didn't last season. And so maybe there was some overestimation of what this team was capable of by management. Again, the Lindholm and Zadorov contracts to me both do not look good for the Boston Bruins. I was happy Vancouver did not sign those deals. So on the blue line, I want to talk about this too. Because the blue line, I think with Hampus Lindholm out, it really does make that worse too. And it's going to lead to bad numbers for the goaltenders because while I'm not going to say Swayman hasn't been part of the problem, he has, especially over the last couple of weeks. With Lindholm out, it's made the defense that much worse. Teams are just getting way too many chances from the inner slot and from in close. Most goals in the National Hockey League now are scored from just a couple of feet from the net. And we talk about goal. This goalie's a sieve and that goalie's a sieve. Look at some of these goals that players are scoring right now. Really, the key thing for Boston is get them away from the bloody net. Last night against Columbus, same thing. And watching this, it was like, all right, so people are going to dump on Swayman. I get it. He got his big raise. Everybody's going to be mad at him. But the defense is not doing anybody any favors. So Lindholm, 17 games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. And I've got the points totals up there for a reason, too. McAvoy, 20 games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. Lowry, 16 games, 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points. Zadorov, as previously mentioned, 5 assists in 20 games. Carlo, 20 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. Peak, 14 games and 2 assists. Osterley's played 3 games since Lindholm got hurt. And Wotherspoon's appeared in 10 games himself. Where's the point man on the power play? Where is the Roman Josi style defenseman? And McAvoy should be in that category, but it just hasn't been clicking this year for McAvoy, and I can't make that argument. And so the offense from the blue line, it's not there. And almost every contending team has that blue liner that'll play a ton of minutes and put up some points as well. You look at the top teams around the NHL, that's something they most if not all have in common, that they have that anchor on the blue line. With Lindholm out, you can name Joe Sacco coach. You can bring in 15 different coaches. I don't know that you can replace Hampus Lindholm. And this was already a blue line that was iffy with Lindholm in there. And without him, it just gets that much worse. So I'm sure that there will be those who do a happy dance because there's been some Bruins fans that aren't happy with Montgomery and line juggling and all that. But what else is he supposed to do? You don't have wingers that are producing. You don't have the top end talent that you did in years past. You have to try to manufacture it. And that involves experimenting. And when your team's 8-9-3 and you've got management breathing down your neck about, this has got to get better, this is unacceptable, you do everything you can, everything in your power. I don't think Jim Montgomery is going to be unemployed for very long. I think he's an excellent coach. I think his overall track record in Boston shows that. And I'm surprised that this move takes place today on some level, but it feels like Don Sweeney is bulletproof. That we can look at this team right now and say, "Oof, this is tough. This is a rough lineup," and yet Don Sweeney's safe. Sweeney's 100% safe at this point. It sure seems like it, anyways. So I guess if Boston just keeps playing badly, they just bring in a coach. Maybe Sweeney will come out and say, well, I guess we'll do some kind of retool or rebuild. But this is a team that needs a lot. And I don't know how you fix it. Because they've been a good team for as long as they have. They don't have anybody coming up of note that can turn this around. They don't have anybody in the minors who's going to be the next Pastrnak. They don't have a guy in the minors who's going to be a minute-munching defenseman that's going to put up points and play a really strong game. They just don't have that at this point. So Boston, to me, needs to readjust their expectations, adjust those expectations down a little bit. And I, on some level, kind of wish they had done that in the offseason rather than spending the money they did with Lindholm and Zadorov. Because if they'd saved that money, arguably they're still in the same spot, but they'd have money to spend and they'd be able to make upgrades. And we're a quarter of the way into the season. There are definitely some teams that would love to get rid of some guys at this point to get some cap space. But Boston, they spent that money. And I don't know how Boston gets out of this. I don't know if it gets any better under Joe Sacco because, and I hope I haven't said Sacco gets at any point in this video. It's easy to say Joe Sacco, very easy. But I'm not convinced in their depth in center. I'm not convinced they have a number one center, first off. I don't know if there's a number one center there. There's a couple of number twos. There's a couple of number threes. I don't know if there's a number one center. And then on the blue line, I don't know if they have that guy. McAvoy hasn't been that guy so far this year. Maybe a change at coach, maybe it helps, but I just don't know how this team is expected to win a bunch of games and make the playoffs this year. I just don't see it. And again, I get accused here and there of, oh, he's not a real Bruins fan because he's not just going to believe. Well, why? I think that's just blind following. That's not being a fan. That's just, being a follower. And just, I will never question anything this team does. This team is great. I'm not that guy. So, at any rate, we'll see what happens with Boston in the coming days and weeks. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Can this be fixed? My guess is no, but can it be fixed? Is there a number one center here? Is there a way to get more out of the blue line than what they have? And if you're in charge of this team and you're not allowed to fire Don Sweeney, just saying not allowed to fire Don Sweeney, how would you try to fix it? Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I can't wait for everybody to just say, well, this is all on Swayman. This is Swayman's fault. Because he's not a number one center, he's not depth on the blue line, and he's not a scoring winger. So I think sometimes people look at the logo and they just go, oh, Boston's got a good team. But go look at the stats, go look at the players, and come back and tell me that team should be in the same category as Florida, or the Rangers, or Carolina, or Washington, or Toronto. I'll even throw Toronto out there, sure, because Toronto has depth. They've got some good scorers. Matthews has been out for a while. They've still been able to win some games because they have scoring depth. If Pastrnak was out for a while, well, Boston's already got the worst offense in the league. 31st is just above 32nd, and the 32nd ranked power play, that's at the bottom. So what would happen if something took place and Pastrnak was hurt? Yeah, it wouldn't be a pretty story. But anyways, let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I really want to be wrong on this. I want, Lindholm to turn it around and score 10 points in the next 5 games. And they're all, they're lining up at center ice and they're doing river dance on skates. And it's this huge, great winning streak. I don't see it coming. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And by looking at the preview board I'm getting ready for tomorrow morning, Boston's at home against Utah on Thursday. That's the first game where we'll see Joe Sacco behind the bench. And I wish him all the luck in the world because I do think he's going to need it. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I will talk to you again soon.